What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the very first edition of the Hysteria Hour. I'm your host and will be your host through these deep dive journeys of conspiracy theories, Alex Bennison. Before we do get into the actual conspiracy theory, can you make sure that if you are watching this, you can join in by putting any theories or any views that you have about the conspiracy theories in the comments. They will flash up on the screen once you've commented them. Also, make sure to share this around, get this out to as many people as possible, because with it being the debut episode, I want to see how intrigued people are and see how many people really want to watch and listen to these conspiracy theories, and maybe even comment some suggestions for further theories that we can look into. This is the Hysteria Hour podcast, or live stream, I guess you could say. Live on the What the Buzz network, or WTB. Make sure that you follow them on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. For this episode, though, we're going to be looking at something that's a bit of a common topic at the moment. Seeing though there was a big interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle surrounding them leaving the royal family and going off to do their own ventures. And then she did the interview with Oprah and basically speaks about how she was treated in her time during being part of the royal family. I thought we might as well take a bit of a step back in time and look back at someone else who probably had to deal with the similar kind of way that she was treated whilst being part of the royal family, and that's Princess Diana. Obviously, there's lots of theories surrounding Diana. We won't get into every single one. This is going to be just an hour podcast where we'll deep dive into some of the main theories. There may be some smaller theories that you might want to comment, or maybe you want to put your own theory out there. Just make sure that you get in the comments and put out anything that you think is relevant towards this topic. So I guess we could start with how Diana got into the royal family. Diana wasn't born into the royal family, although she was born into British nobility. She married Prince Charles, which made them Prince and Princess of Wales. Although their marriage clearly had a lot of bumps in the road. Many outsiders looking in would see there's love triangles, there's lots of deceitful, maybe secrets that are hidden behind closed doors that we don't fully know about. Maybe there's things that we don't know, but the media itself surrounded her, hounded her for so long, kind of beat her down into a submission as well, made her out to be so, well, she just ended up so down because of the media attention around her and things, that then tragedy did strike. We do have a couple of comments already. Her death definitely wasn't an accident. The thing is with this podcast, I'm not going to sit on the fence. I'm going to sit on the fence. I'm not going to say whether it was definitely a cover-up or whether the actual story is true. This is for you guys to decide whether you think that these theories are true or whether you believe the actual story that was reported. Totally agree. I'm not sure. My head is all over the place. I'm super nervous for this being the first edition of Hysteria. I really want this to go well. I really want you guys to enjoy this episode. So please let me know if there's any tweaks that you think I should do. Hopefully in the future, it won't just be me by myself. I will be joined by other guests as well. Ghost emoji, that might be a bit too far. Al coming in, she's chilling on the moon with Elvis, JFK, and Michael Jackson, Tupac, and Biggie. That's why NASA haven't been back to the moon. That might be a theory for another day. So yeah, we might as well start off with the main story that was released to the public anyway. The original story that was released surrounding Princess Diana's death. As reported, Princess Diana passed away August 31st, 1997, after a car crash that involved 4 people inside the car, 2 which were pronounced dead upon impact, and then Princess Diana passed away in hospital whilst receiving treatment. The car crash took place after media hounding her while she was in Paris. Now, she was in Paris with her then current boyfriend, and she was staying at a hotel which I believe his father had ties towards. He was an Egyptian filmmaker. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Let me find it in my notes. Dodi Fayed was a boyfriend at the time. They were staying at the hotel. There was a plan for them to escape the hotel by going through a back exit, getting into a Mercedes car and driving away from the paparazzi. They sent off a decoy car from the front of the hotel to try and road away the photographers that were hounding them whilst they were staying at the hotel. They ended up taking this other car, and then a car crash happened in a tunnel not too far away from the hotel in the early hours of the morning of the 31st of August. We've got a couple more comments. Big Liz went on full G mode and took her out. Weird trivia, he was the son of Fulham FC's owner. I'm guessing at the time, because he's not anymore, because it's the Khans that now own the Fulham FC. So yeah, the reports say that Princess Diana wasn't in the car when the paramedics turned up. She was sat by the side of the car. Some reports say that she only had a few broken bones. She had a small chest injury, tiny tear on the side of her eye. Some say that there was no blood involved whatsoever. This is where reports kind of get mixed together, so you can't really tell what the actual verdict was. But reports say that she was sat by the side of the car when paramedics turned up. She was completely conscious. She had sound of mind. She was able to speak, and she was saying, "Oh my God, what happened? What's happened?" Then she went into cardiac arrest. At the scene, they resuscitated her, managed to get stable, put her in the ambulance, took her to the hospital, and then she passed away in the hospital that night. This is where things get clouded, because there were reports that there's no seatbelt, so they say that might have taken part in their passing. Them not wearing seatbelts, especially the bodyguard of Diana. It's common for a bodyguard to not wear a seatbelt because it restricts the movement from them protecting whoever they are protecting, basically. However, the main part of this death is, one part says that she has a tiny tear in a main vein that leads to the heart, which is the reason why they couldn't save her. They sent her into surgery to try and repair the vein, and they couldn't save her. Other reports say that the car crash was that bad that her heart moved from the left-hand side of the body across to the right-hand side, which caused the tear, which then resulted in Diana's death. So that's where we're at. In 1999, it was concluded that the driver was intoxicated and lost control of the car, flying into a pillar. Some reports say 120 miles an hour, which has been proven to be false. It can't have been 125 miles an hour. It's reported that it would be about 65, 70 miles an hour that it collides with this pillar head first. Dodi and the driver were killed on impact. The bodyguard, I believe, survived, and Diana passed away in hospital receiving treatment. I've got another. So we'll jump into the first conspiracy surrounding that major report. The first conspiracy is that there was another car that was there. Now, it's not a conspiracy. This is true. There was another car. It's been proven that there was another car because there were found traces of the paint from that car on the side of the Mercedes after the crash. It was proven that a white Fiat was never seen entering the tunnel at the same time as the Mercedes was driving there. However, the white Fiat was seen exiting the tunnel after the crash. The white Fiat, which police in Paris could never find. However, Dodi Fayed's father paid for a private investigation in the 2000s, and they found the Fiat with that basically it had a paint job. It wasn't a white Fiat anymore. They changed its colour to try and get away from the story and the narrative that this car was in the tunnel at the time of the death. Now, the driver of that car, or the owner of that car at the time, was a guy called James Anderson. Now, James Anderson was a photographer. He took pictures for paparazzi, so it wouldn't be unusual for a paparazzi to be in a car driving by the side of Princess Diana trying to snap a few photos of her, because this is what was the major cause of her death. They said that she was trying to get away from the paparazzi, that she was in such a panic that she wanted the driver to just get away as fast as possible, get away from the limelight, stop them from taking the photos, and it caused the speed for them to speed into the tunnel and then cause the crash. If this Fiat is a paparazzi guy trying to take photos through the side of his car, through his window, then it makes sense. Could have been from the motorcycle journalists on the bikes were chasing them. Yes, there is the fact that the motorcyclists were chasing them on bikes, but apparently the motorcycles were not close enough to them for when the crash took place. They went into the tunnel with no motorcycles or other cars around them. They entered the tunnel solely by themselves. The next thing, when the photographers pulled up in the tunnel, the crash had already taken place. So this white Fiat that appeared out of thin air could have either already been in the tunnel, and people, they weren't paying attention when it went in, the Mercedes goes in afterwards, or something else, something a bit more sinister, I guess. But the main theory of this is James Anderson. James Anderson was the driver. He was the paparazzi basically taking photos. James Anderson, 3 years later, after they found the car, they found that it was registered to him at the time of the death. A couple more comments. There was a report that motorcycles were further back, so can't have been them. Was there CCTV? We'll get on to the CCTV bit. 3 years after the death, and they found the car, James Anderson was found dead in a burnt up car in the middle of some woods. Apparently, it was ruled as suicide due to some ongoing issues that was taking place in his personal life. His wife did defend him and said that he was asleep in bed with her that night, so it couldn't have been him driving in the tunnel at the time of Princess Diana's death. However, when James Anderson's body was taken for a post-mortem to see basically what was the death, we know he was burned inside the car, but they wanted to do a further post-mortem on him. They found a hole in his head the size of a bullet. The bullet-shaped hole had been put down on the post-mortem to have taken place because of the fire. They say that the fire basically caused the hole to appear inside his head, but for it to be going through the front and back of his head, it does seem like a bullet hole. There's rumours whether it was guilt that drove him to suicide, because around this time was when Dodi Fayed's father was doing all the investigation work. He wanted to find out what had caused his son's and then partner's death in that tunnel. There's also rumours that it's an assassination to try and keep him quiet, because if Mohammed Fayed had found James Anderson and got his private investigation team to basically interrogate him, there could have been a possibility that there was a confession on his part for being in the tunnel at that time. Who knows? But there was a possibility that James Anderson knew something further, and this burnt down car that he was found in with the hole in his head could have been an assassination to try and keep him quiet. Defo murder. They were scared he was going to come clean. Like I said, I'm going to sit on the fence here about everything. I can't say, I'm not going to come out with my opinions on this. This is basically, I'm going through the theories that we may have. We have 4 theories basically to run through with this. The problem with the white Fiat theory is that the CCTV in the tunnel at the time did not work. So there is no record of this Fiat ever being in the tunnel. There's no record of it entering the tunnel, but there is a record of it leaving the tunnel. Many of the journalists that were there waiting on the other side of the tunnel for the car to come out so they could get paparazzi pictures of Diana say that they saw this white Fiat leave the tunnel. Anderson and his wife were convinced that he was at home that night, so the car could not have been there, or it cannot have been him driving that car at the time. In August 31st, this took place, by the way. The car was sold in October, so only a couple of months later, Anderson decides to sell the car. The car apparently had something like 25,000 miles on it. It was shot to pieces with this car. I believe it was 25,000 miles. It might be a lot more, I don't know. But it was shot to pieces. This is why people were thinking, is it possible to shift a car that beaten down so quickly and get it resprayed and painted and basically wipe this car from the face of the earth so it didn't exist? There's a possibility that they did do that. Maybe they helped him. They just gave it to someone quickly, get rid of this car. Who knows? Then there's Levian Pham. He's a taxi driver. And apparently he owned Fiat that James Anderson was supposedly driving. He sprayed this Fiat red after the crash. Pham's involvement was ruled out by French police, as he said he was at work at the night of the death. However, it was uncovered that he left work early that night. So Pham was at work the night of Princess Diana's death. He wasn't at work when the death took place. Multiple witnesses recall seeing a man matching his description leaving the tunnel. French police never took this any further. They never questioned Pham any further than what was already happening. So maybe there's a possibility that Pham was involved with this Fiat. Maybe he was the one in the end that was driving that car that previously was owned by James Anderson. So, theory number 2. Sorry, I really need a drink then. A flashing bright light. Now, 3 eyewitnesses have said that they witnessed a bright light, a thunderous bright white light shone into the tunnel at the time of the crash. Now, it's reported that MI6 were using bright lights in their training. It was used, I think, in a different operation to blind a driver of someone who they wanted to interrogate. That was their way of making the car crash because the driver couldn't see where he was going. Now, these reports are really hard to pin down because the paparazzi obviously being everywhere around, these flashing bright lights could have just been photographers constantly trying to get those photos, the flashes of the cameras. The argument would be that if it would have blinded the driver, to this extent that he would crash the car, that it would have blinded the paparazzi that also witnessed this bright light that caused the crash. Now, it does tie towards some sort of MI6 involvement. There is a possibility that they were involved, sorry. But I have a feeling that this bright, flashing white light isn't going to be partly. I don't think this one is true. I think that maybe it is the paparazzi lights that are flashing. Also, with CCTV not working, but I think it was working on the edges of the tunnel, or just on the outskirts of the tunnel, they would have been able to capture this flashing light that comes through the tunnel. Would have been the perfect time for them to use, because they could just blame it on the paparazzi. Yeah, true. That's why they think that this possibly is a conspiracy that they intertwine together. That it's the perfect alibi, is to say that this bright, flashing white light that caused a crash was actually just a flash from a photographer. But how blinding this flashing light is, it would have caused a lot more damage for a lot more people in that sort of area, for that radius. But there's a possibility, if the CCTV is not working, you can't see exactly what happens. Who knows? These are why it's conspiracy theories. So the third theory is the hospital transport. Now, this is one of the major theories. This is one of the reasons why people think that this is a cover-up, and why people think that they wanted Diana. I say they. I keep saying they. I need to say that the constituency of England wanted Diana to pass. There was a plan made for Princess Diana to pass away inside that tunnel. The emergency call was taking place at 12:26 a.m. The ambulance that's carrying Diana aimed to be at the hospital for 6 minutes past 2. She was put in there in the ambulance at 18 minutes past 1. So it would have taken less than an hour for them to get her to the hospital to see if they could keep her alive. Basically, to send her to surgery so that they could try and repair that tear in her vein. The ambulance driver confirmed that the doctor on board told him to drive slowly in an attempt to save her life. Now, I don't know if there's any paramedics out there that are watching this or can comment to say whether that's true. She had been in a car crash and then had also gone into cardiac arrest. So whether an ambulance driver driving slowly was a way to not throw her around, because they didn't know the full extent of the injuries inside internally. They knew that she was sat by the side of that car when the crash took place. After the crash took place, and that she was unconscious and that she was speaking, but they didn't know exactly what internal injuries that she had. So maybe him telling them to drive slowly was a way of them saying, don't throw it around too much, because we don't want to cause any more internal damage than there already is. On the way to the hospital, though, they took a different route. They didn't go to the closest hospital. They took her to a further away hospital. Diana could have been treated at this other hospital, the hospital that was closer to the tunnel and closer to the accident. She would have been taken there. She would have had her injury seen to by the doctors at that hospital, but instead the ambulance decides to take her to a different hospital, which is a lot further away, and they're driving slowly. The onboard doctor, Martino, treated Diana at the scene for 40 minutes before the ambulance set off. He had to wait until she was stable enough to set off. So they had to bring her resuscitation round before they could set off. So 40 minutes of her sat there in that tunnel and needing resuscitation. for a cardiac arrest that she went into. So they set 40 minutes in the tunnel, then they set off, and then they took 2 hours for him to get her to the hospital. It made a complete stop near hospital. According to the onboard doctors, this was necessary for her blood pressure dropped and that they thought her heart would stop. They're claiming that if they'd have drove to the hospital while she was on board, because of her blood pressure, she would have had another heart attack, and basically they wouldn't have been able to save her in that ambulance at that time. The route that this ambulance took, how long it took her to get there, and I know we're in 2021 now, we're quite a few years further on. We've got more medical technology than what we did at that point. The problem being that they still had the technology to save her. They could have saved her. And I think if the ambulance had gone to the original destination, the original hospital, it would have been, there would have been a bigger chance of her staying alive. The fourth conspiracy it's a bit of a big one. So Princess Diana has had a letter that had been released by the media after her death. This letter says that she knows that there's a plan in place for them to get rid of Diana so that Charles can marry his new girlfriend, Camilla. Now, everyone knows that Camilla and Charles had a relationship whilst he was married to Princess Diana. Now, she wrote this letter, and I can't remember exactly which newspaper printed it, but a newspaper got a hold of it, released this to the public, but blanked out the name of who she was saying it was about. This letter says, blank is trying to get rid of me so that Charles and Camilla can get married, because Charles was not able to get married until Diana's passing due to being part of the royal family. Although Diana had all her titles stripped from the divorce, she was no longer Princess of Wales. She was still using her media attention for good things, and I think that kind of helped her public image. Obviously, she did some fantastic work with landmines, a lot to do with children, and a lot of charity work that she did was fantastic. And I think that was part of the reason why the British public liked her as much as what they did. But she said in a letter to a friend that Charles wanted her dead, basically, or the crown wanted her dead so that Charles could marry. I think that's the most convincing theory of it all. It came directly from What My Evans Do We Need. Now, yes, I mean, you can't really argue with someone saying, look, someone wants me dead, and then they do die. However, there's a lot of reports saying that she was nervous because of paparazzi that were around her at the moment, and that she thought that there was a lot of plans. She was unnerved, basically, from everything that was going on at that point in time. She knew that if Charles wanted to marry Camilla, that she needed to pass away before that could take place. Do we believe the letter that she wrote to him? Maybe. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. It is a very, very convincing argument to say that she basically wrote and predicted her own death before it took place. The next one is a hard thing to prove, because really you're going off somebody else's word, and there's no physical evidence about this one, but we'll see. So, as we know, Diana and Dodi Fayed at that point in time were in a relationship. She'd spent a couple of weeks down in the south of France on Mohammed Fayed's yacht that he'd bought so that they could stay away from the public eye. Just before she left to go to this hotel that then took place for the car accident, Mohammed Al Fayed says that Princess Diana told him that she was pregnant. Now, the royal family are not the most sympathetic of people. They apparently could not accept that there would be an Egyptian Muslim that could eventually be the half-brother of a future king. Because obviously, she's the mother of Prince William and Prince Harry, so they would be related. And apparently, the crown could not believe anything regarding. They could not have that. They couldn't accept that could be a possibility for the future. That they'd have an Egyptian Muslim half brother. Now, that's speculation. Nobody really knows that, because Diana's body was shortly after the death embalmed, meaning that all her internal organs were taken out. She was drained of her blood, and she was basically stripped of all internal organs. So there is no trace to say whether she was carrying a child at the time of the death. It also means that when it comes to doing an autopsy in England, there's no trace of anything. They can't really do an autopsy because they've taken all the evidence out of the body. So whether she was actually pregnant at the time of the crash or not is very much up in the air. It's, do we accept his word on this story, or do we just accept that she could have been pregnant and that we'll never really know the truth behind that? The embalming was taking place before. This embalming was taking place before all the paperwork was signed and done, which is against the law in France. Paperwork must be completed after a death or an autopsy before you can embalm a corpse. However, in Diana's case, the paperwork was done straight after. They did it, got the paperwork done, so that no one could say, well, you haven't done it. We've done the paperwork, it's done, it's there. But she's also been embalmed, and you'll never know the truth behind whether she was pregnant or not. Officials say it was because it was hot. Plus, Diana's body was stored in an empty room on the opposite side of the mortuary. Plus, it was unacceptable to present her body in the state that it was in. They didn't put her in the morgue. They didn't keep her body cold. They left it in a different room. They didn't store it like you would store someone else's body when they pass away. They left it out, which could have left to decomposition, for her to start decomposing in a warm room rapidly, quickly, and they just didn't store it like you would normally store a body, which means that half the evidence starts to just peel away slowly because it isn't keeping the body intact. It means also that when the body does eventually come to England, there's no work that can be done regarding the death. They can't look deep into any of these theories or the reasons why. They just have to take the French paperwork as gospel. Now, theories are saying that it took place in France because it was easier to get the French to cooperate for it, because there was such a love for Princess Diana in this country. because of who she was, how she acted, how she presented herself, how she was with the public, that if they tried to do this, there would be far too many people that would call for an outcry and they wouldn't accept it. Whereas it took place in France, and that it was easier for them to get away with this. So when it came back to England, they couldn't trace it as much as what they could. Al-Fayed seems to have started a lot of these theories. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think when your son and his at the time girlfriend pass away in the same car crash, I think these theories do start to go inside your head. They do. Some of them do link together and they do add up, and you do think, oh yeah, I can understand that. That links to that, links to that, and then you do end up, you go down a rabbit hole, which is what I went down. I went down a rabbit hole when I was looking into this. I mean, the pages and pages of notes that I have originally, the mourning, the funeral, the royal family's representation of Diana after her death is absolutely ridiculous. The memorials that were set place for her, people came from around the world to mourn for Diana. They came to Buckingham Palace to throw flowers in front of Buckingham Palace and put in front and show their support towards one of the favourite monarchs of the modern day. There were a couple of people that got arrested for trying to steal teddies and flowers that were left outside. It's ridiculous. So, back to the actual car crash, though, because I realised that this one should have been top of the list and it should have gone on first. The driver, Henry Paul. Now, Henry Paul was he was the manager of the security staff of the hotel at that time. He was the one that hatched the plan for them to drive to an undisclosed location through the back exit of the hotel to get them free. Now, it was ruled that Henry Paul was the reason why the crash took place. That is the official story that he's been ruled as, that he was intoxicated whilst driving on both alcohol and antidepressants, then sped down into the tunnel, lost control, and hit the pillar. However, the tests all say different things. Tests say that Henry Paul had an incredibly high alcohol level in his bloodstream. They say that where is the actual thing? That he was found to have 12.8% carbon hemoglobin in his body. A smoker normally has about 10%, so it's not an unusual result. And he'd only been smoking small cigars during the night of the crash taking place. However, the official findings showed that his blood reports actually had 20.7 in his bloodstream at the time of death. If accurate, the rate of the dispersal of carbon monoxide from the bloodstream would have meant that Paul's blood had 40% saturation a few hours earlier, and he would have scarcely been able to function at all. It would make you think that if this is the case, if he had 40% carbon monoxide flowing around the bloodstream and he was unable to basically stand, speak, like if he were incredibly drunk, that Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed would not have got in the car with him at that point, let alone him drive that car. The blood samples have been one of the major talking points. People are saying that they were tampered with. Were they ever actually taken? Were reports just produced off the back of false findings? That's a hard thing to try and pin down. In 2009, it was reported that DNA samples confirmed that the blood samples with alcohol levels were indeed from the driver. So he did have alcohol already in his system. Apparently, he was reported in September 1997 that he had 3 times the French legal limit in his bloodstream when the car crash took place, meaning that it wouldn't have been unusual for somebody to crash the car on the amount of alcohol that he had been drinking that night. However, Henry Paul was the person that ended up getting the main blame for this, for Diana's death. She, unfortunately, was taken far, far, far too early from this earth. She did such good work for so many people around the world, and it was a shame for everyone involved to see her pass away so early in her life. There is a lot more conspiracy theories surrounding Princess Diana and her death. A lot more that you can go in depth into. However, I'm not going to jump into everything because it's one of those things where with conspiracy theories, it's really whether you believe it or you don't. If you do believe it, then that's fine. Whether you believe the original story or you believe one of these theories that came out afterwards, that is up to you. However, I do hope that you that you enjoyed running down a bit of a rabbit hole with me. I want to keep this series going. I want to do more theories in the future. I want to do different theories, things that people will be really interested in listening to, or things that I'd be really interested in researching. I'd love to have guests on as well that we can have a converse, maybe even come up with a prediction ourselves regarding whatever took place. Loved it. Can't wait for the next one. Thank you. Yeah, so let us know in the comments below what theory you want us to do next. Who you think would be a good guest for the series. Maybe we could contact them and get them on and we can speak about whatever theory that they're most knowledgeable on. There's a couple of theories that I'm already looking into. We're thinking about doing a flat earth theory podcast. I'll get the list up of the other podcasts. I mean, there's obviously the main ones. You get things like the 9/11 theory. There's theories on absolutely everything. So make sure that you get in the comment below. Tell us what you want us to research, or you want me to research, who you want on as a guest, whether you want to come on as a guest as well. Contact us. Make sure that you go to Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Either get in the comments or message the account and find out if you want. Tell us if you want to be on the show. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode of the Hysteria Hour. I know it's not, this isn't a full hour, but it is also quite hard to try and do this solo. So hopefully in the future we can get guests on and we can have a good conversation between us and you at home when you're commenting. And like I said, if you are watching this live and you haven't commented, make sure that you do comment in the future episodes because they will flash up on screen. I'll bring them up when and as I can. Before I do leave, I'm going to play a quick video that's going to show you all the live videos on the Buzz, and make sure that you follow them at WTBdotcom on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and go subscribe to The Buzz on YouTube. Here's a quick video.
War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Bringing that to competitors. Till we see the confetti fall, be ready for war. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Bringing that to competitors. Till we see the confetti fall, be ready for war. Tell them I'm ready, any opponent. The crown heavy and every minute is chosen. A path only fit for kings, and you all know what this court means. What did you enlist for? If it isn't getting more rings, then you gon' have to switch your team. Trust me, it gets more mean. I'm a nightmare going up against your dreams. First step is explosive like a bomb hit. Bet if I let it fly, I cannot miss. And you ain't got a chance at the top 10 when you getting clamped all night by your locksmith. On the block throwing lobs to my top bigs. I'm a chef, no look, what's the top dish? Tie game, through the pressure as the clock ticks. Crossover, step back, hit a shot, swish.
Yeah, that is all the fantastic live shows. They're here on the Buzz. Make sure that you follow and check each of them out when they're live, or go watch past episodes. They're absolutely fantastic. And as I said, make sure that you get in the comments of this video and tell us what theories you want us to look up next. There's so many theories for us to look up. Lots regarding deaths, disappearances, aliens, flat earth, whatever you name it. We want to do the research. We want you to be engaged, and we want you to enjoy this hour, the Hysteria Hour. So I've been your host, Alex Bennis, and I will see you on the next edition. We are going to try and make this bi-weekly each Monday as well, so fingers crossed we won't have any issues next time. But I will see you next